Oh,
We're so alone tonight. What's going on?
it's December.
It's no excuse.
It's early December. It's not even close to the holidays yet.
For the record, we are ready.
For the record, we will start.
No
Welcome,
excuse.
everyone. We are shy of a quorum. One more member will join us, but that still will not make a quorum. We're going to continue with our business anyway. It happens, you know, last month we had a full house. We can shape the resolution and members who are absent can catch up with the video. We will, for the record, take attendance and then we will skip all the rest of the script.
Okay. Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. Stu Desser,
Present.
Justin Goldberg won't be with us tonight. Gloria Haig,
Present.
Rupal Katad,
Present.
Steve Perez won't be with us tonight. Michael and Rowe will be joining us later. And Solomon and Hader Zaidi also won't be with us tonight. And we do not have quorum.
Is there
We'll
a party
proceed.
we don't know about?
I'm sorry?
Was there a party we weren't invited to? I'm wondering.
This is not it. That's all I can tell you. So I'm gonna set the stage with an opening monologue. It's substantially my opinion and it is subject to dispute. But it is a starting point. So when I started bicycling 54 years ago, running red lights, riding on the sidewalk, riding against traffic was as legitimate and accepted as a pedestrian crossing against the light or jaywalking. Motorists used to yell at me when I was riding on the street to ride on the sidewalk. Including one guy I still remember who then blew through red lights. What's changed obviously is the exponential growth in the number of bicyclists, substantially nowadays electric vehicles. So the culture has not changed, the circumstances have, and that has made life rather messy. And some people, including some who've been seriously injured by e-bikes, have fumed at the disorder. Now, I should mention that as a bicyclist, I understand what that feeling is because for decades as bicyclists, we used to complain that no one cared about the motorists, some of them murderous and malicious, who would risk our lives on the street. And yet, as much as we complained, no one seemed to care. So I have a good degree of empathy. This community board has, however, I think properly, consistently supported the expansion of micromobility. I believe it will continue to do so. Our interest today is in improving pedestrian safety on our sidewalks. And doing that is not contrary to our enthusiasm for micromobility. Our aim is to fix what needs fixing without destroying what's beneficial. I'm gonna do a little bit of a sidebar here.
Oh, just one quick thing. I just realized we didn't agree as to who's taking minutes.
I don't know that we have to right now, for two reasons. One, we don't have quorum, and secondly, I will probably ask someone who's not here to take minutes.
Okay.
Because that will be consistent with the theme that whoever's not here has to watch the meeting anyway.
Okay, fair enough. Just don't.
No problem. So my little tangent is that my impression is that many people think that bicyclists, e-bicyclists, scooter riders are outlaws and motorists more or less comply. Apparently that's not the feeling in this room, but it is the feeling amongst a number of people I've talked to. And I just want to make clear that there's just a difference in the way these different modes of transportation violate the law. So bicyclists, it's pretty much binary. It's black and white. You're either riding against traffic, you're running a red light or you're running on the sidewalk. With motorists, it's always a matter of degree. You know, are you 5 miles over the speed limit or 15 miles over the speed limit? And we need to recognize that, you know, we might say 10 miles over the speed limit is not a big deal. But when you look at the data, uh, a pedestrian is twice as likely to die if hit by a motorist going 35 miles an hour as one going 25 miles an hour. So these sort of trivial differences are actually quite significant. In New York, around 120 pedestrians are killed every year by motorists. Between 0 and 2 right now are killed by bikes. The number obviously can change with time and there's living more bikes. So our proposed resolution tries to weigh considerations. We're proposing data collection so that we have more information in the future to make decisions. We propose that in the case of commercial riders, the law be enforced that requires them to wear on their outerwear the name of the clothing of the business, I'm sorry, that they're working for, and that would include independent contractors if that's possible. And we support measures that hold the delivery apps and other services vicariously liable for the people who are working for them, which is what happens with people who drive trucks for different companies. The idea is not to be overly punitive to the riders, but to put as much pressure as possible on the delivery companies. I have a statement that Steve asked me to make, but I'll do that later. Does anyone else want to talk before I introduce transportation alternatives?
Well, I would just say my recent experience just coming here was really kind of interesting. One is on the corner that usually is crazy bike. I'm walking across and I've got 4 bikes stopped, waiting. And I was like, how beautiful is that? I almost wanted to like congratulate them or give them, I'm like, it was beautiful. And then I'm walking around the corner and I've got 2 cars running through a red light. So it's complex. That's, that's all I can say about it. And I noticed that, and I really appreciate the people that show up and do the right thing, but you're right, everyone isn't. And it's in all areas that everyone isn't doing that. So it's just kind of the weirdness of the bikes were so great at the corner and the cars were running red light.
And as a bicyclist a few weeks ago, I was almost taken down by an e-bike. So, you know, it's every
complex.
permutation.
Mhm.
So, Emily, are you with us? Emily?
Hello, thank you so much for
Sure.
having us here tonight. I'm Emily Jacoby. I'm the Manhattan organizer with Transportation Alternatives. And I'm here with our executive director interim, Philip. And he's going to walk through basically our lens on some of these issues, how to basically secure sidewalks as safe havens for pedestrians. And we're also going to talk through just holistically some of the competing challenges, creating some of the just challenges on sidewalks we see today, and how to target them in ways that make the city better and safer for everyone. So we really appreciate you allowing us to join tonight, and we look forward to your questions. I'll pass it off to Philip.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for inviting us in today. Good evening. I am a little sick, so if I do randomly just mute myself, I might be having coughing fits, so I appreciate any patience with that. But as Emily said, my name is Philip Miedkowski, and I'm the interim deputy executive director at Transportation Alternatives. We're an advocacy group fighting for safe streets across the 5 boroughs. And every day, our research team starts their day by compiling all of the details of every fatality and serious injury that occurred over the previous 24 hours. Names, locations, and every detail that we can find from open data and from news reporting. Street safety is at the core of our mission and work, and pedestrians are the most vulnerable road users and must be prioritized. Sidewalks should be safe havens. Biking and pedestrian safety are intertwined, not in opposition to one another. Over the last 8-9 years, New York experienced a huge shift with same-day and instant deliveries. 9 in 10 New Yorkers now receive package delivery at least once a week. Half of New Yorkers now order food by an app at least once a week. Some of the zip codes with the most food deliveries citywide are located in CB6, including zip code 10016, which ranks in first place. These food delivery companies burst onto the scene and into our public streets with little to no regulation and are ranking in billions of dollars in profit. These companies have all they need to grow hand over fist. The largest city in America, very high restaurant density and diversity, and most importantly, access to a high number of workers that can too easily be replaced in an unregulated market. As a result, this has created conditions where delivery workers are forced to ride on the sidewalk, among other actions. The truth is, no cyclist wants to bike on the sidewalk, but they are forced to for often two reasons. Either they feel unsafe on the street due to lack of infrastructure. The existing infrastructure incentivizes them to park their bike, or because they know that the apps can fire them for missing a food delivery even by 30 seconds. Time and time again, we see that going after individual behavior, especially in the workplace when people's livelihoods are on the line, doesn't work. When the city recently tackled the commercial waste pickup industry, after years of going after individual drivers and companies with no success and no reduction in dangerous movement on our streets and fatalities, the city turned to regulating the entire industry systemically by creating minimum work standards. When Uber and Lyft started operating in New York City 10, 12 years ago, New York experienced similar conditions. Dangerous driving by the drivers, wage theft by the apps, and drivers committing suicide due to dangerous working conditions. Individual punishment did not work. Instead, the city, after years, brought Uber and Lyft under their purview and began regulating them under TLC. Just to give one example of how we should regulate food app industry. Today, the food delivery industry is not required to take into account how the delivery driver worker gets to their destination. Imagine if instead there was no incentive for the delivery worker to be forced to deliver as quickly as possible, and instead metrics like distance, availability of protected bike lanes, how common one-way streets are in the neighborhood, and other conditions were factored in. By regulating the food delivery industry, we could achieve systemic solutions that solve the issue upstream before the sidewalk riding even occurs. Licensing and registration is reactive. The harm is already caused. The harm has already been caused. We also need to take a closer look at our public streets infrastructure when trying to solve this issue. What can be done to shift those last 30 seconds of a cyclist or e-bike rider's ride? How do we make our sidewalks safer? Today, despite 8 in 10 households not owning a car in CB6, a significant majority of curb space is dedicated to street parking, and only 8% of streets in CB6 have a protected bike lane. Adding more bike parking in the street bed as opposed to the sidewalk, moving city bikes off of sidewalks and into the street bed would significantly decrease riding on the sidewalk. Additionally, UT's own data shows that installing a protected bike lane reduces sidewalk riding by 94% and reduces pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries by 30%. We should look to the food industry, which raking in billions of dollars in profits off of the privilege of using New York's public streets to pay for these upgrades. So what could be done now? Well, currently there was a city council bill just introduced this week that would create a task force to study options for making street design and infrastructure safer in consideration of increased use of e-bikes and related collisions. This is an important bill. It's introduced and sponsored by the chair of the Transportation Committee and can answer a lot of the questions of why these actions are being taken. Take, for example, the last 30 seconds of a delivery worker going from the street bed, biking those last 5 feet up to a stoop and locking the bike there in order to deliver the food. Today, nobody knows why that delivery worker spends their last 30 seconds of their trip on the sidewalk, biking right up to the stoop. Is it because they're afraid that their bike might get stolen and there isn't a bike parking available nearby? Is it because that they're so pressed for time that they're worried that every second counts and they'll get fired and easily replaced? Those are two separate possibilities. It could be both of them with two different infrastructure solutions. So a task force to study street design and study why this is occurring could be very beneficial. Additionally, the mayor also announced support for what he's calling the Department of Sustainable Delivery, which would also take a holistic, systemic look at the food app delivery industry and regulate it as I proposed earlier today. In public remarks, the mayor and the deputy mayors have promised and have said that a bill would be introduced in the city council by the end of this calendar year. The comptroller, Brad Lander, also recently released a report that also argues that going after individual behavior is not effective and that a systemic, holistic regulation of the entire industry is needed here. Additionally, we also know that expanded infrastructure, like I mentioned earlier, moving city bike docks, bike parking, bike racks off of the sidewalk into the street bed reduces riding on the sidewalk, as does protected bike lanes. And we've also found that true. We also found that to be true with Deliverista hubs, like in Cooper Square, which have shown immediate reduction in sidewalk conflicts. And we also need to incentivize moving away from mopeds, which are heavier and more dangerous and go significantly faster than e-bikes. One last thing in regards to the licensing, since there is a bill in the City Council, Intro 66, which will require the licensing and registration of all electric e-bikes. We know that this is a bad idea because every city that has instituted bike licensing, including major cities like LA, Houston, and Toronto, have subsequently repealed it and found it ineffective. Bike licensing has also been shown to make cycling less safe by depressing the number of people who choose to ride a bike, because bike safety increases with the number of people biking. And if you require bike licensing and create more barriers to riding a bike, there'll be fewer cyclists and safety in numbers, and the reduction of safety in numbers. Further, Intro 606 would also be massively expensive. We know that when the New York City ID program was introduced 10, 12 years ago, which was based off of existing infrastructure at the time, it cost over $8.4 million in its first year. So we know that a program like this, which would require the licensing and registration of over 100,000 bikes in the city, and require personnel and offices throughout the 5 boroughs, would be even more expensive than that. I'll pause there just to see if there are any questions, but this is why we're in general opposed to going after individual behavior, since that isn't the most effective method, and instead looking at why these actions are being taken looking at the problem upstream rather than after the fact that they've already occurred and the harm has already been done, but looking at it upstream and how we can prevent it from happening in the first place, and asking why, because that'll most often lead us to a solution that is systemic and holistic. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions for me or for Emily.
I'm impressed with how you braved through your hoarseness. I'd be interested in understanding a little bit more about how the delivery apps work and the measure down to 30 seconds. But I see Luis is with us from Los Deliveristas Unidos. And if he forgives my attempt to pronounce Spanish, then I'll ask if he wants to get to explain to us how the apps actually work. Luis? Well, I see him on the list, but
Hello everyone. I'm so
Hello.
sorry. My commute took longer than I thought. I'm still on the streets, so it's gonna be a little bit of noisy. But I was like able to listen Philip presentation the last few minutes. In terms of how the application works, is first of all, we want to say that there's no human beings at the other side of the line. There is a company who will give instructions to delivery workers through an algorithm who is always made to make more profit to these companies. So this algorithm is telling workers constantly to go faster and faster. Since I become the director of the delivery workers, I've never seen any message from these companies telling their workers to be safe, to respect the rules, the transit rules, because what they care is the delivery have to go and be in the customers' homes as fast as possible. The problem with this is that in the mind of the delivery worker, he's constantly every second thinking, if I take longer, the company is gonna rate or low my rate. And if they low my rate enough, they're gonna deactivate my account. That means you're out of work. What we know is that to return an account who was deactivated is almost impossible. You're like completely like out of the market or out of that company specifically. You're like enter like a blacklist. You cannot return. And those decisions are made by a computer, not by a human being who is like tracking you. So it's like the activations are automatic, without reason and without any proper appeal process. So the deliverista is thinking constantly, okay, I have to do this faster because the activations are real. Tipping are low because customers are angry, I'm taking longer. But also at the same time, the delivery worker doesn't know how much is going to be paid for that delivery. The companies are telling the delivery worker, you're going to get this trip is going to be $2. And then they have a process of adjusting at the end of the week with a formula that we don't know how they do it, that they give them, they give the delivery workers the extra money for being connected during the week. So the pressure on the delivery workers is, I'm gonna be deactivated, my rate is gonna go low, I'm gonna get penalties, my customers are not happy. So what happened, and at the same time, they're checking their phone for notifications, or they have to check again. They're like scanning their faces constantly. And during this weather, it's like cold weather, their phones are shut down because it's too cold. So it's like it's a big problem. And what I'm saying now is related to why delivery workers are stressed and also want to get faster to their delivery location. So instead of walking from the corner to the entrance of the building, the delivery worker just take his bike and ride on the sidewalk and go fast, park in some place. Hopefully they don't stall their bicycle. So it's a real situation. And we believe that registration and increasing the stops for deliveristas, or increasing ticketing is not going to solve this problem. We need the companies being accountable and change their algorithm, or like giving notification about safety. We need more education for the workers, and definitely we need to open new deliverista hubs that they can feel safe in that space, and they gather during the waiting time. And definitely we need more worker protections, like transparency payment, tipping in advance, and clear deactivation protocols, allowing workers to appeal these decisions. So it's a combination of things we need, and we believe that only registration and licensing is not going to solve these safety issues.
Thank you, Luis. I know that you favor regulation of the delivery app companies. That's probably the first remedy that you're seeking. In our resolution, which I don't remember if I sent to you, one of our propositions is that delivery workers wear on their outerwear the name of the firm for which they're working, whether it's Uber or an individual restaurant, as well as an ID number. Now, this is already the law. We're actually proposing that the lettering be a little bit larger and that the law be enforced. And we do this so that the pressure is put not on the individual rider, but on the company, because now the company's name is on that rider when he's on the sidewalk. How do you feel about that?
I think it's already a law for delivery workers who work directly with restaurants. And it's good because like you have the name of the restaurant and you have a phone number, so people can see what's gonna happen. I totally agree that so what happened right now is that everybody's angry with delivery workers, but they never think about the companies. It's like, oh, companies are like the good guys here, and delivery workers who are doing the hard work are the bad people. So naming them and publicly be that we know that workers working for these companies, I think it's a good thing. The problem I think I see is that companies now, I think they have to provide a bag with the name of the company. Many delivery workers work for multiple companies at the same time. So how to do that is something that we need to figure out. There's not only one, it's what they call it like multi-app gigs. So people are working for DoorDash, Uber, Grubhub at the same time, or doing like grocery deliveries with Instacart. So I think we need to figure out how to make like bags with multiple logos. I don't know, or they need a special jacket. I don't know how to do that, but the reality is that workers are working for multiple companies at the same time.
And they actually have deliveries in their backpack for different firms at the exact same time?
Because their delivery workers, they usually don't don't go home and change the bag from one company to another. So if they're doing like 3 hours a day with DoorDash, and then the next schedule is with Uber, they're not gonna change the bag. They're gonna keep doing it with the same DoorDash bag.
So if I could jump in and, echoing what Luis here said too, but I believe that like the vest requirement is how Luis just said is required if you're working directly for the restaurant. But because the delivery workers are contractors, a lot of the laws don't apply and can't be applied to contractors under New York state law. So that's why, yes, that law with the vest requirements and the numbers is still, it was passed, way before food delivery apps came onto the scene in 2015, 2016. Because back then we only had, you would call the pizza place a few blocks away from you, and that somebody at that restaurant would, walk over or bike over, and they were hired by that restaurant. So that law only applies to direct workers of the restaurants, and can't apply. And that, unfortunately, a lot of the laws, because they are contractors, can't be applied to delivery workers.
Well, it could be applied if the law were adjusted, right? I mean, there's nothing that keeps the legislature from doing that.
I mean, it would require an entire reworking of contract law. So for example, the delivery apps are also limited in what kind of education materials they can provide to contractors. Because as soon as you start providing a certain amount of education materials, those workers are no longer contractors; they're considered workers. So, I mean, I'm not a labor expert, but this is like what I've been told many times from elected official staff, that because they're contractors, it's and how New York State law applies, that the city itself can't pass some of these laws and would require huge changes to contract law from Albany.
Well, wait, we're going to hear from Council Member Menon's office shortly. Before we do that, I want to say hi to Michael Ann, who's joined us. And I see Jason Fromowitz, who is the chair of the Transportation Committee and has an interest in this, would like to speak, and we'd like him to speak, so it works out well.
So I just had a quick comment as it relates to the identification of the delivery apps for the delivery workers to wear. I think this is just a comment and concern. Even if that were to be in place, I'm not confident that there's any mechanism to make a complaint about a unsafe rider, or I question how effective any such requirement would be, given that I don't think the delivery apps would be incentivized to do anything about a complaint, and I'm not confident that there'd be any method to reach them to make a complaint, even if it was clear who they were delivering for. So I think we should just keep in mind that the identification, as Philip pointed out, made sense when it was your local pizza shop and you could call and you could walk in and make a complaint. These are gigantic multi-million-dollar corporations, and I don't think they don't have mechanisms to address unsafe riding complaints, nor an incentive today to do so. So I will question how effective or what that would really accomplish for us.
Let's go to Brandon with Council Member Julie Menon's office and see if you can address some of these questions.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff for Councilmember Julie Menon. Apologies for any background noise. I just want to first and foremost start by saying that a lot of the conversations here today, more than certainly, will be heard before the City Council, before the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, for a hearing next Wednesday, December 11th at 10 a.m. at City Hall, if I remember correctly. It's fundamental for folks who really want to give their opinions and thoughts on this issue to be there. I'm sure many folks, and I've been in the district office hearing these individuals, have thoughts on e-bikes, bikes, safety issues, And it's really important to be there at that hearing because one of the bills is mentioned on licensing on e-bikes will be heard there. And the council member certainly supports that, given the number of conversations within the district. In fact, I believe it's the issue, number one issue that we've heard among constituents over the past year. It's a major problem in terms of safety where folks are injured, are hurt, are afraid. And the council member certainly supported that, along with the other bill before the committee on a task force, as mentioned earlier, that's sponsored by Councilmember Brooks Powers, who's the chair on the committee. And again, I really emphasize all of this because these committee hearings are an opportunity for folks to hear and listen, not only among the administration, but also people in the public. I can tell you in terms of the council member that she certainly is aware that there's been a lot, and I mean a lot of conversation across the city on bicycles, on the impacts that we're seeing on constituents, town halls, virtual forums, you name it. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that folks have in terms of the hearing or general questions for the CM, if I'm able to answer.
Before we get to you, Michael Ann, you heard that we were talking about the question of whether a delivery worker can be well, first of all, whether there can be the delivery app can be held liable for the independent contractor who they've engaged. Can that happen?
It's a good question. So for a lot of these workers, they operate as independent contractors. Now, by law, they are not employees of the company. As a result, they, by not being employees, are solely responsible for their conduct. And therefore, these companies do not have liability, from my understanding, based on the law. Because again, they operate as independent contractors. And that word independent is very key, which gives them distance from the company.
Right, but is it possible for the law to hold the companies responsible?
Based on the conduct of a delivery worker?
Yes. The delivery worker who is engaged by them at that time.
From my understanding, if a delivery worker does not follow the protocol, or let's say there are complaints levied, depending, of course, on the company and the app, that person can certainly no longer work with the company. But if, let's say, a conduct of a person who isn't an independent contractor, is flagged, it typically, again, falls on the independent contractor because they are self-responsible. They assume the responsibility here in case of any misconduct. I don't think there's any mechanism, should misconduct happen on the independent contractor, to then go on the app.
Before I follow up and before I get to you, Michael Ann, Philip, and then, Philip, go ahead with transportation alternatives first, and then we'll get to Ari.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, the delivery workers are contractors. So, I agree with everything that is said there. There's minimum that, that they're responsible for their own behavior. And there is very little that, there's even limited education that, like I mentioned earlier, that the apps can give to the workers, to the contractors before they become workers. But in our proposal and what the mayor proposed back in his State of the City idea with this, what he's calling the Department of Sustainable Delivery, would require the app companies to submit an application to be allowed to operate within New York, the boundaries of New York City, by agreeing to have minimum working standards in order to operate. So that, for example, taking into account distance, protected bike lanes, the number of one-way streets, and how long it would take for a cyclist to deliver food. Today, that is not taken into consideration. And that is why nobody wants to be biking on the sidewalk. Nobody wants to be biking the wrong way up the bike lane. But the food delivery workers are forced to because they are so terrified of being blocked for life and losing their job and losing their livelihood if they don't deliver the food quickly enough. So it can't be regulated in the aftermath and directly between the food delivery app and the contractor, but we could create a system just like we did with Lyft and Uber, where when they came under TLC regulation, if they agreed to meet certain minimum working standards. For example, Uber and Lyft drivers can't work more than 80 hours. That was a huge problem before they were brought in under TLC. So by creating a system where they have to apply with the city in order to work within the bounds of New York City and meet these minimum standards, then we can, nip the issue upstream and ensure that this doesn't ever occur by creating minimum working standards. And if those app companies aren't meeting those standards, then of course, the city could always deny their application the next time they apply, or pull their application and say that they are no longer allowed to work in the city. So that's like one way in order to get around it. We already did this with Uber and Lyft, which are very similar app companies that have contractors. All of their drivers are contractors, not workers for the company.
Thank you. Ari, with Assembly Member Boris's office. Thank
Hey,
you for
everybody.
being with us.
No,
too.
of course. Thanks for having me here. My name's Ari. I'm the legislative director for Assembly Member Alex Boris, Assembly Member for the 73rd District, Upper East Side, Midtown East, Turtle Bay, Murray Hill. It's been really great hearing from all of y'all, and I wanted to quickly touch on some legislation that we're working on that I think addresses some of these concerns. And forgive me, we're operating on most of the discussion's been on the city level. We're obviously a state level entity, but relevant anyway. We're putting in when we can in January, we'll be putting in 3 bills on this issue. One that requires apps and they're all focused on the app side, that requires apps like DoorDash and Uber and all that to verify whether or not their contractors have street legal mopeds or mopeds that are registered with the state. We passed a bill last year that requires all mopeds be registered at the point of sale. And the governor signed our bill. That bill goes into effect in January. And we see this sort of as an extension of that, right? To ensure, to put more of the onus of biker safety and street legality kind of back on the companies. And then 2 sort of novel bills that we're working on that address some of this stuff. Philip, you talked about some of the ways to put the sort of the onus back on the companies for incorporating safety into their ensuring kind of biker safety on the street. We have a bill that would require the companies to input into their algorithm, to weight their algorithm based on bikers' safety, at least as much as they weight it on speed and on other factors. And so what that looks like is the apps already have tracking data. They keep very close track of their riders. You can see it in the app. The apps already have the data to be able to tell whether or not their bikers are biking the wrong way or going over the speed limit. And we would force them to write into their algorithm something that encourages something that rewards bikers that bike safely and thus discourages just pure speed, which we completely agree with. A lot of what TransAlta said is that people don't, and Luis, you all at Deliveries as well, that these bikers don't want to violate the law, but they're forced by these algorithms and the fear of lockout to bike the wrong way, to sort of violate the rules of the road. And a lot of that is sort of being forced on them by the companies. And then another bill in a similar vein that would require the companies, and this is, I'm not a lawyer, but it touches a little bit on some of the, and we'll have to we'll work with our internal staff to make sure that this bill is, legal, but that would require the companies to pay for traffic violations incurred by their drivers on company time, so to speak. Again, the idea there being the companies will then be economically incentivized themselves to make sure that they don't put in, these sort of speed requirements or these requirements in their algorithms that encourage bikers to break the law, because if they're caught, the companies will be held sort of financially responsible for it. So that's just some of the stuff we're working on the state level, and obviously would love to hear from everyone else on this call. And we have language on all of those, which I'd be happy to send around to people as well.
It sounds like there's quite a lot of agreement here, which kind of takes the fun out of the party. But I'm glad for it anyway. Michael, and you had your hand raised earlier. You lowered it, but if you want to speak, take this opportunity.
Yeah, of course I do. Good evening. Thank you very much. Sorry I was a little late to the party here. But we're trying to work on this resolution, and one of the reasons it was brought up is because we're not hearing enough about sidewalk safety. It's all about the streets, which is great, and I think they mean the sidewalks as well. However, the language of pedestrians right away is not for the sidewalks is not in a lot of these bills, and I don't know if that needs to be spelled out a whole bunch more. But what we're learning also from the officer that was on with us in September, that they just don't have the resources, and I'm sure that area, and I'm sure that, Philip, that they don't have the police department does not have the resources to pull these guys over, and it's really difficult for them to do that anyway. And then so when you're talking about these bills and you're talking about these programs and the algorithms and all that kind of stuff, which just sounds wonderful, who's going to be mandating that? Who's actually going to be the person that clicks the button and says, by the way, you violated and you now need to go where, do what, and how is that going to work? I'm sorry if I missed that earlier,
No.
But there's a lot of this talk. And, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And we hear a lot of bills. I've read a lot of bills since I've come on to CB6, and trying to do the homework. It's hard to keep up with all these bills that are trying to be passed. And, love what Alex is doing and been following him for a long time. So, it's great. And then I ask also, how fast can we get this going? Because it's almost like the pandemic, but it's a pandemic with the bicycles, mayhem all over the cities. And it starts in a lot of places, but it's gotten completely out of control as we know it. And I know that it's step by step and trying to catch up. And I love the idea about these, getting these apps and going after these companies and however that's going to work. But it's like, okay, we're talking about this, but really how are we going to get those guys to actually stop doing what they're doing? Who's going to actually pull these guys over, or how are they going to get arrested, or how are they going to get violations? I'd like to know more about that.
So can I just quickly respond to that? So I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of what we're trying to do with these bills is counter the exact problem you brought up, which is that NYPD, and you guys know and you've heard, NYPD just doesn't have the capacity to deal with kind of the scope of the problem. So we need enforcement, and we need an enforcement of the laws of the road. The enforcement here would be from a state agency onto the companies. And the hope is that what the goal of these bills would be is to align incentives so that when the bikers bike unsafely, the companies lose money. That is the core of it. And so the hope with these bills is that it wouldn't require increased police enforcement. The hitting the companies, in their stock price and in their shares, is what would make them have their riders bike more safely. And that's not to say it replaces, obviously, traditional enforcement, but it's a way to augment without sort of the often expensive, often fraught increase in a police budget that kind of traditional enforcement would require.
So what are we talking about as far as a fine goes? I mean, you look at Amazon, for example, the Amazon that dumps their stuff all over the sidewalks and they park in places that they're not supposed to park. So it's like they get a slap on the hand, they don't care. They'll pay the ticket and then on they go. And they'll pick another spot or keep doing what they're doing and they'll pay the ticket because they can do that. And I feel like the same thing would be with these companies unless you're actually really affecting them.
Sure.
And physically, like, okay, that worker's not allowed to work for you anymore. That worker's not allowed to work for you anymore. I mean, it has to, I feel like it has to be a zero tolerance of allowing this mayhem to happen any longer.
I'll let, oh yeah, sorry. I'll let other people speak real quick. The quick answer to that is that it wouldn't be sort of requiring case by case enforcement. There would be subject to some sort of audit as to whether the company in its central file, in its central database, whether its algorithm is complying with law. And it's much easier to audit the algorithm than it is to enforce the tens of thousands of biker interactions that happen every day. It's just impossible to look at all of them. If you're looking at one place, it makes the world a little easier. But I'll let other people speak. I'm taking up a lot of oxygen.
Thank you. Let's go to Philip next, please.
No, I think Art, covered it. But yeah, I guess just very quickly, I think that's a perfect example, the delivery trucks that infrastructure is the answer. The enforcement and fines doesn't work. But imagine if at every block that there was a parking space dedicated for those delivery trucks to pull in there, not block a lane of traffic, and that they would have a guaranteed or a parking space that that they could rent out ahead of time, knowing when the delivery gets in there. If the infrastructure was there for that, then the blocking of the lane would never even occur. So the fine wouldn't have to happen. The fine is ineffective. So that's a perfect example for why we need infrastructure, why we need the city bike docks to come off the sidewalks, why the bike parking racks need to be in the street bed, why protected bike lanes. And we need to solve the problem upstream as opposed to running after every single individual behavior and doing the fines, which is exactly as you said, isn't effective.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out there because, I know it sounds a little extreme. Just a second. I just want to ask your opinion on what do you feel about capping the amount of people that are allowed to have these licenses?
Who are you addressing the question to, Michael?
To both transportation, Philip and Ari, and Emily,
I'm
she hasn't spoken.
I'm happy to take it, Philip, if you want to.
Yeah.
There's a cap is an interesting idea. We have a similar idea in the legislation that we just passed, which comes into effect in a month or so. If you take a second and think about how many mopeds you think are in New York City, take a ballpark guess. Registered with the city, there were 1,500 citywide. That's the official registry. So I don't have a good sense. That's it, right? So I don't have a good sense of how many there actually are. In the first half of this year, though, the NYPD sees 12,000. So it's probably a little more than 1,500. I think requiring, and the state is in the process of doing that, thanks to Assembly Bill 8450, which we passed, to make sure that the existing registration requirements, which itself serves as not a cap, but a sort of a soft check on, make sure that is enforced and that law is followed, and then continuing forcing the companies to take some accountability for whether or not their bikers are using street legal mopeds. Is not like a hard cap, like it's there can't be more than 10,000 licenses, but we have an existing system for registering people and checking whether or not what they're doing is street legal, and it's just roundly not being followed. So we're looking into where you've taken some, we'll take some creative solutions to that. Sort of what I'd go with. And Philip, I know you had some thoughts on it.
Let's go to Jason before I ask my many questions. Jason?
A couple comments. So as it pertains to a cap on the amount of delivery workers, there is not an actual cap today, but there is effectively a cap. When the city council last 1 or 2 years passed the delivery worker minimum wage law, they effectively caused the apps to reduce the amount of workers working for them. And that's going back to the comment from Los Deliveristas and the concern about being disabled on the apps is that because they're required to pay a minimum wage, it forces the apps to be more conscientious of how many delivery workers they have on the platform. And so what has happened as a result of the delivery worker minimum wage law is that they have started limiting and not accepting as many bike riders as they had in the past. Effectively, in the past, anybody could sign up at any time. In fact, I did a number of deliveries myself for delivery apps, just here and there. And now that because of the minimum wage, because the apps are disincentivized will be paying for these workers if they're not actively doing deliveries, they're effectively limiting the amount of people who are doing the deliveries now to keep to the level that they're keeping them busy and not just having an influx of people. So I think we're ready at a some effective means of controlling the amount of workers on these platforms. And then second, I wanted to comment. I think we need to be very careful about the language that we're using, and I'm honestly offended by the verbiage of pandemic of bicyclists. These are members of our community. These are people who work in our community and serve residents of our community. I think it's extremely disrespectful to refer to the work that they do as it's comparing them to an infection. I think that's just unacceptable way to look at this
Yeah,
issue.
I'm not talking about the workers, Jason. I'm talking about the action.
I'm sorry, Michael Ann, we're back to the old rules where you have to raise your hand before
Okay,
speaking.
sorry.
That's all. Thank you.
Do you want me to say that again?
No, we'll move on. Does anyone here have some questions?
No, I'm good.
Just that this is exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
You know, it's a complicated issue, but this is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer of where we really have to go with
Yeah.
this and together go with this, which
Yeah.
is what I was proposing before. So
Yeah.
I'm happy about that. Some of the legislation is concerning. Cause I don't know how, I still worry about the delivery person still. Because even if the app is getting penalized, I still feel like they're just gonna knock it down to the workers. And I just don't know how we balance all that to protect people who are just trying to earn a living. So I guess we can all figure that out together.
One thing I really confirmed for me after reading everything you've said is that infrastructure is where,
That's
in a
huge.
long run,
Yeah,
in a long-term solution, infrastructure is where we really
Key.
need to focus, and that's where we need Albany. That's where we need city council. That's where we need all levels of government to kind of come together and focus more on infrastructure.
yeah, I have that listed as number one, and then
Yeah.
algorithm, how that works. And the bill about that could be very effective.
Okay, Emily?
Yeah, to your point, and I think just thinking about the levels we're looking at this on the legislative landscape, I think one of the most concerning outcomes and potential consequences of licensing as it targets individuals making the choice they're making in the moment because of all these pressures we've discussed is just the potential for more police interactions that will be carried out inequitably based on similar policies in the past that we've seen. So I think in this room, we can all share that sentiment that that's a negative for the city, that's a negative for the people getting on these modes who are using them for the first time. And when we're looking at that choice for even like moped riders, who we would like to see less moped riders, they go very fast, they're gas-powered vehicles. It's like if we're making it harder to get an e-bike, which is a cleaner, safer, slower option, and we're making it harder for people to potentially risk their lives on the streets, we're going to see people making choices that make everyone less safe. We don't want an outcome of a licensing bill to be more people on mopeds, right? Like, we don't want this conflation and sense of fear that is like, it's palpable because people are adjusting to so much change at one time. And I I hear what Brandon's saying. Like, obviously, council members have been hearing an earful of concerned pedestrians of all ages and abilities who just want safety. And we don't want, like, some of the manipulative tendencies and impulses of just cracking down on people as if they're the problem to be the leading policies here. So I'll just leave on that note of like real racial justice matters, and I'll leave off with Luis, who has a hand up, but I just wanted to make that point too.
Thank you, Luis. Luis, we don't hear you.
Here I am. Okay, sorry for that. I just want to talk about three things. One is we have a very good experience in the city of New York with construction industry. Before, in the past, the heavy weight on ticketing or giving penalties was on the workers, individuals. The OSHA inspector came to the construction site asking for OSHA card to the workers. They have 10 workers without OSHA card, and they were given a ticket individually. Companies were not even in the middle. They don't care. They would just keep hiring people. They changed the game, and now all the ticketing, all the fees are going directly to the companies who are hiring people without OSHA card. And that changed completely the industry. That's one example. The other thing, like that Jason talked about, the number of the deliveristas, that they were like not, they're reducing the number of delivery workers in the industry. We believe that instead of like reducing or not hiring or not allowing new accounts, the companies are doing, they're keep hiring and opening new accounts by giving delivery workers just a few hours a week. We have the example of workers right before they're working 30 hours, 40 hours a week. Now they have 5 hours in a week, 2 hours one day, 1 hour next day. And then what happened is that they have extra delivery orders. The workers keep picking their phones, like if they have extra. So that's why they're hanging out on the sidewalk. They're waiting for an extra, like outside of their shift orders. So and then we have hundreds of thousands of workers just waiting just in case they have an extra order. And the other thing is like the delivery industry is like fast changing industry. So now you have more than 60,000 delivery workers on the street of New York. Those is like they're rotating constantly. So you're gonna be ticketing and I don't know how many thousand of people a year. Those thousands are moving to another industry. They're hiring new 10,000, and they have to know there's no accountability for the companies. So they're not educating, they're not telling workers not like the bad behaviors. So we are ended up in the same situation.
Thank you, Michael. And before I get to you, I just want to tell there's some members of the community who are not on the board who are present. If any of you want to speak, please do raise your hand. And I see that forgive my pronunciation again, Saqib has put a note up. So if you want to speak, please raise your hand. But we'll right now go to Michael Ann. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay. Yeah, back to Jason again. Listen, my apology if you took it the wrong way. And please, when I speak about this, it's not about the people. It's about the action of. So it's about the widespread occurrence of this happening. It has nothing to do with, picking on a certain group of people. I'm all for these people being employed. However, I think this habit and how it's gone viral, if you will. If you don't like that word, sorry, but it's just out of control. As we know, this is why we're talking about it, but it's not about the people. It's about the action of. That's all I want to say.
Thanks. I noticed that Eric is here. I didn't know if you wanted to, add anything, but if you do, put your hand up and let us know. Or maybe not. Saqib, can we give permission to speak?
Yep. So he is now able to speak.
Hello, thanks for having me. This is my first time at a community board meeting, so I appreciate it. I just wanted to um, add on to the voices that are in support of putting the onus on the companies more than the workers and law enforcement and state agencies. I think it needs to be on the companies because that's where incentives will align the greatest. Um, we can't really count on any other groups being incentivized enough on their own, at least, to protect bike lanes and to enforce algorithmic fairness and a lot of the other initiatives being spoken about here. I think there needs to be strict zero tolerance or low tolerance policies where companies are hurting if they do not protect pedestrians and their workers. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go to Eric next, who I didn't expect to be here, but I'm pleased to see. One sec while we give you.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thanks so much. Hey, Stu, thanks so much for that. Sorry, I was slow to the raise hand function button there before. Yeah, I mean, I did want to chime in before because I feel like a lot of this activity and conduct more overlaps with traffic
Actually,
violations.
before
Yeah,
you,
please.
we should say who you are.
Oh, sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for that, Stu. My name is Eric Straza. I'm the Supervisor of Community Engagement at the Manhattan DA's office. Happy to be here with you this evening, and it's definitely been an informative conversation. I think, as I was saying before, a lot of our work more overlaps when there is more serious activity that occurs when somebody is riding a bike. We see sometimes thefts on e-bikes, things like that. And also, obviously, e-bike collisions, anything like that. We want to be involved in and want to help out to the extent that we can. So if anyone knows of any cases they want to be updated on related to any conduct that occurred on an e-bike, not necessarily just traffic infractions like driving or biking the wrong way, biking on a sidewalk, past the speed limit, things like that. Our door is always open. Please feel free to reach out. And we want to the extent possible, when it relates to any more of those, more whether it's a collision or any kind of activity like that, we want to be involved. So yeah, please feel free to keep us in the loop. And Stu, I know you have my contact information, so feel free to pass that along to anyone who might find it helpful.
Do you have any kind of data that shows collisions between e-bikes and pedestrians? Does that exist in your database? I know that's been collected sort of by DOT, but not quite.
It's something I could potentially explore. I know that a lot of the arms of our office are particularly siloed, so our data team might have something on that. So let me talk to them about it, see if we have any numbers there, and I can get back to you.
Okay, thanks. Jason?
Just a moment. Jason should be able to speak now.
Thank you. So just wanted to make some general comments, a little bit of tooting my own horn from the Transportation Committee. We've passed a number of resolutions, and the board has passed a number of resolutions in relation to not necessarily sidewalks, but to e-mobility vehicles and to concerns around e-bikes, mopeds, et cetera. And I just want to call those out because I think there's quite a bit of overlap with the discussion that we've been having today. And I think there's a lot of alignment with what the elected officials are discussing as proposed legislation, which I would like to think has something to do with our resolution, but probably doesn't. But I applaud the effort nonetheless. So a couple of things I wanted to call out. So in June 2023, we passed a resolution titled supporting new measures to address safety risks associated with e-mobility. We made a number of recommendations, including education campaigns that we would like to see the city promote, to see the delivery apps promote. It is safety infrastructure, a lot of like what transportation alternatives spoke to, as well as putting accountability onto the delivery apps in terms of having them responsible for doing some monitoring and accountability of the speed of the delivery workers. So that was one bill that I think was, or sorry, not bill, resolution that was relevant. We also very recently passed a resolution, November 18th, 2024, about supporting the implementation of cyclist safety education. This was more directed towards city bike users, but we wanted to see, again, city bike do some better education for riders as they're getting started on the app about how to ride safely, public messaging, and yeah, effectively wanted to encourage City Bike to do better education of users to make sure they know how to ride safely. And then lastly, I wanted to call attention in November 9th, 2023, we passed a resolution in opposition to Intro 758, which is the predecessor to the current e-bike registration bill. There was a number of concerns with that bill as it stood, and ultimately the board took the position that registering e-bikes was not the method to address this issue. So I think a lot of what is being discussed here is stuff that we've already taken a stance on. It's just something I wanted to make sure.
Thank you. We're gonna allow Sandra to speak in just a moment.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My
We
name
can.
is Tanya Paul, and I live here in New York City, and this is basically the community board that I belong to. This summer, my husband and I were hit by an e-scooter while we were walking, and my husband has a traumatic brain injury, and he spent 10 days in intensive care in Bellevue Hospital. He's still not working, and we don't know when he'll be capable of working. I have a broken nose and other injuries, and now we both have trauma, and we are afraid to be outside. I really hope that we can do something together to protect pedestrians, because drivers of e-vehicles are breaking all kinds of rules, and that's my concern. We are not safe on sidewalks or crosswalks, and unfortunately, I know lots of people like two of us. And we all know that bikes and e-bikes are not the same thing. I'm a cyclist. I mean, I stopped now because I'm too scared. And when we talk about safety, we talk about safety of delivery people and bikers. We need to remember that we don't only have delivery people on e-bikes. We have kids on e-bikes. We have people who are just having fun or not following any rules. And I was almost hit today on the sidewalk again by an e-bike. I didn't walk for months and months and months. I'm doing therapy, and slowly I go out, but I don't feel safe. I don't go to parks because they are all over parks too. I know people who are injured and disabled for the rest of their lives by being hit by e-bikes. I don't have anything against delivery people, but we need to have rules. We need to be safe. And I'm sure that there must be a way to fix this issue because a lot of old people, all of my friends are scared to go out now. They're scared to be on sidewalks. The other day, I saw a guy running into the train by scooter, riding a scooter in the subway, going into the train. People ride them in stores. People ride them in it's just too much. I don't have great ideas how to fix this, but I'm willing to help, and it's not about me anymore because nobody can give me back what I lost. But I might help somebody else. And thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And I think that everyone here is pretty sympathetic to what you've been through. I'm going to ask if anyone from TA would like to respond to that, because that is an issue that we hear. And you know, we know it's not just about commercial bicyclists.
Sonia, I'm so sorry to hear that happened to you. It shouldn't happen ever to anyone. Our sidewalks should be the safest place. The park should be an even safer place, not only to just walk around, but to live out life in public, to make memories, to get where you need to go. We need to preserve them for pedestrians. So we're right there with you. We have the solutions we have. We appreciate every piece of your story. And I also, something we haven't really spoken to tonight in depth are just like the pedestrian safety tactics we can expand citywide in general, which will also reduce some of these conflicts that help also to keep bikes where they're supposed to be. So again, like you can chase after someone doing the wrong thing with the cops, or you can make sure an intersection's daylit so pedestrians have a lot of room to cross the street that's very visible, that can't be cut through by someone on a bike, in a car, that's preserved. That's why we advocate for comprehensive daylighting. CB6 has some gaps in the pedestrian light interval system. Having those carved out pedestrian spaces for early crossing really help just make sure pedestrian space is clear and visible for all. So Sonia, like, thank you, one, for sharing your story at a public meeting. I know it takes a lot of courage to speak up, especially going through trauma. We'd love to connect you with our partner organization, Families for Safe Streets, if you'd be interested in meeting with them. But more so, thank you for joining. And we hear you because it shouldn't happen to you or anyone.
And we do need to say that, that in any mode of transportation, in any place in life, there are bad actors. And so the challenge is to control bad conduct without punishing everyone else. Michael Ann, you have your hand up.
Hi, is Sonia still there? Is it Sonia? Hello?
Yeah, Sonia's still here. Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, thank you again for sharing your story. I've heard many of them last year at a assembly hearing with Alex was there. What happened when this occurrence happened? Were police notified? Did the person, I can't remember if you said the person flee the incident? Who's paying for your bills at this time, you know, that kind of thing?
Yeah, please let her.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were both hit at the same time by the same person. So you can imagine how fast he was going, if he managed to do this to us. And my husband, if he hit the metal bar around the trees, he would probably be dead. If he didn't hit us, he would hit kids that were all around us. So somebody would either die or be injured. He was arrested because he crashed, and I spent night in the emergency room watching him all night. And in one point I realized that's him. And then I asked police to separate us because it was really disturbing. He's really young, he's 23. We know his name, but he doesn't have any kind of insurance, and any lawyer didn't want to work on this case. We don't have money to sue him on our own, and we have a lot of medical bills, and some are covered by my husband's insurance, medical insurance. The rest we would need to pay on our own, not to mention the rehab, because and therapy, psychotherapy is not covered 100% by medical insurance. So since late June, we are dealing with this, and I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not mad at that guy. I might sound like I'm mad, but I am maybe, disturbed just by thinking about it. And I just want to use my energy and time to help to change something if possible. Our life changed, and we are considering to leave the city because it's really hard to live here now, to go to grocery store, to cross the street, to take a bus. So yeah, I would like that guy who hit us to be responsible, but I don't have any idea how. I met a lot of people who have same problem as me.
Did he work for an app, or was he just riding on his own? Do you know?
So we don't know. The police didn't investigate that, and no lawyers were interested to check that because he doesn't have insurance, and he said that he's not working, and he said, I mean, he's really young, so yeah, we don't know. He had one of those really fast e-scooters, and the helmet saved his life. He had a really big helmet, or I think that was the smartest thing he
Okay,
did.
stay with us for a moment, Sonia. Could you
I
let
will.
Eric?
Yeah.
So we're back to Eric with the district attorney's office.
Hi, thanks so much, Stu and Brendan. Just wanted to also chime in on this too. Sanjay, if you do feel comfortable, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to me potentially, I don't know if necessarily the incident generated a case for our office. I can obviously look into it. If it did, we might be able to provide some resources like counseling, things like that I think you may have alluded to that you might be interested in. If not, I think we should connect and potentially we might be able to refer you to another agency or organization who might be able to provide you with some services or resources. Not sure how we can kind of exchange that contact information, Stu, but any help there would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brendan has an answer for that.
Yeah, I think the best thing would be if Sanjay, and I apologize if I'm getting your name incorrectly, can send an email to the board office to help, HELP@cbsix.org. That's help@cbsix.org. Just send us an email, and we can reach out to Eric at the district attorney's office with your contact information. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate that.
Thank you. So we all have to discuss next steps here, but does anyone else have anything to say or ask? We've covered it all. Excellent. Very good. I think I want to thank all of our guests. Do we want to have a discussion now, or shall we put this, we don't have a quorum today. And it sounds like there's been a lot of information that we might want to digest. So I would propose that we can talk about this next month.
The resolution.
Everything we're gonna do,
Everything,
yeah.
and Jason has given us, some of this comes out of transportation, although I see Jason's not with us anymore.
Jason's still here.
He is?
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh, there
There
he
he
goes.
is.
Look at that. Okay, so I think we can look at how we approach this. But we'll wait till next month. Are we good at that? And there'll be
Yeah.
the December 11th, 10 a.m. Experience. So I think we're good. Everyone good?
Yeah, I have one.
Except for Michael and
I have
go.
just one question about that hearing on December 11th. When is it? Who mentioned it? Sorry.
10 a.m. at City Hall.
City
Yeah.
Hall, 10 a.m. at City Hall.
I think what's that, transportation and infrastructure, is that the committee?
I think so, but I'll need to double check.
Okay,
Well,
thanks.
yeah,
Okay.
when you, Michael, and when you catch up by watching the video from the top. Yeah,
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
okay. I think I just want to say thank you to everyone. This has been a really excellent session. We've all learned. And most remarkably, there's a lot of agreement, which, as you know, strikes me as odd. But it's sort of good.
Embrace it, Stu.
Yeah. So, anyone else want to say something before we go, or you're all happy? You're all happy, good. Everyone's smiling. This is a good place to close it off. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thanks to all the people that came on. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy holidays.
And we'll send some resources for follow-up as well via email.
Perfect. And since we don't have a quorum, we don't have to move to adjourn. So thank you for all